Casual players. I mean, let me start off by debunking a myth that has been propagated for far too long. The idea or the notion of casual players existing in the MMORPG genre. In this video, I argue that this is an ill-defined term and it has been used to dismiss a huge portion of the online gaming community wrongfully. So I say, we put an end to it. Furthermore, those who consider themselves casual players anywhere near MMORPGs, well, I've got two things for you. You are either a victim of your own naivete, or you're a downright coward. No, I know. Before you go ahead and hastily close this tab or video, throw this device across the room in frustration, let me just explain exactly what I mean here. So if you're still here, let's go back to when it happened. Let's take a moment and imagine yourself in a state of ennui, uninspired by mundanity of your daily routine. You've watched all the TV shows, scrolled enough social media, and you're left with a sense of dissatisfaction. But then, a glimmer of hope appears. You remember the immersive and expansive world of Final Fantasy or World of Warcraft, waiting for you to explore and conquer. As you power up your game, your heart races with excitement and anticipation. You choose to play as a mage, a warrior, a rogue, each with their own unique set of abilities and strengths, as you prepare to be transported to a world full of awe-inspiring castles, treacherous forests, and bustling cities, each with their own rich history and lore. Along the way, you meet fellow players, each with their own stories and personalities, forming bonds that extend beyond the game itself. You join forces to undertake epic quests or battles, or strike on your own and explore vastness of the game's world. As you progress through the game, you begin to realize the depth of the experience. You feel a sense of satisfaction as your character grows stronger and more skilled, unlocking new abilities and items. You might find yourself even competing against other players in PvP battles even, honing your skills and strategies against worthy foes. But the true charm of the game lies not in the competition or rewards that you just got, but in the sense of the adventure and the excitement it provided. The idea that you're a part of something bigger, a community that shares your passion and enthusiasm for this incredible game. So, whether you're a casual player who dips in and out of the game when you have time, or a hardcore player who spends hours every day perfecting skills, the reason why we love fantasy MMORPGs are the same. They offer us a chance to escape into a world of adventure, to connect with others who share our passion, and feel like heroes in a world that desperately needs them. Wrong! Plot twist. Wake up, it's time to get to fucking work, because you need to search up a guide fucking video and you need to be the first. You're stuck in 2004 and it's time to get a clean fucking shave for once, touch some grass because the world has innovated and simultaneously degenerated. Oh, so now that we're suitably motivated, let's talk specifics, shall we? Here's how things really are. The MMO community is traditionally, and might I add, wrongfully divided into two camps. The hardcore Andes, playing hundreds of hours, prioritizing the most elusive achievements and competition. And then we have casual Andes, which consider lesser serious players and often dismissed as a slur to brush away those players in the community, all to reach the ultimate judgment: in-game hours. But here's the thing, the line between casual and hardcore isn't as clear cut as your feeble brain might think, but instead it overlaps, and it's not very much a line at all. In fact, I argue in-game hours got little to do with the distinction between the two, and the actual difference lays with what one defines fun as. What someone defines fun as is very much subjective, so we can't really pinpoint the true desires of a Final Fantasy player or a WoW player. Or can we? But I tell you what we can do, and that's intersubjectively round a based opinion on data and deductive reasoning. And the way we do this is actually very simple. All we need to do is compose a logical inference. So, before we understand anything, we must understand what fun really means. Like I said, fun is etymologically uncertain, but generally speaking, fun is defined by subjective player experience or the intersubjective relation. There is research that investigates the relationship between complexity and fun in video games. One example is a study by Swedster and Weef in 2005, and that explored the relationship between the game immersion, player experience, and game complexity in various video games, including MMORPGs. The study found that players reported high levels of immersion and enjoyment in games that were more complex, challenging, and allowed for greater player agency and exploration. Another study here by Nake and Linley in 2008 examined the relationship between player experience, game design elements including challenge and complexity. In a variety of video game genres, the study found that challenge and complexity were significant predicators of player experience, as well as enjoyment and engagement in gameplay. Not to mention, it deems necessary for immersion and flow. Overall, these studies suggested that there is a positive relationship between complexity and fun in video games, although this depends on various factors such as player experience and preferences, as well as the specific design elements and mechanics of the game. So, knowing this, and we can apply this to our focus, which is MMOs, we know that the average fantasy MMORPG takes a heck of a long time to complete and max out in comparison to other games. If you have played an MMO, you definitely know that this is a based argument, as we have all the tick boxes to do. I mean, customizing character, questing, crafting, gathering, exploring, trading, role-playing, leveling, lore, raiding, dungeon PvP, PvP, participating in events, building, crafting, collecting, loot, trading, clan progression, achievement, mount, farming, minigames, all that and a dozen more, which takes a long time, but it's not about time, is it? As you can set two gamers in a room for hundreds of hours, let's say, in playtime, let's say Final Fantasy, and we have here Andy A prioritizing the story, and then we have Andy B prioritizing, let's say, PvP. Now the question is, which one of these gamers is the more casual gamer? Trick question. None. None are. This is because the distinction between casual and hardcore players still depends on individual perspective and priorities, as one could have focused entirely on role-playing and the other could have focused on savage raiding. Who's to say is more challenging? Is it the timeless acting, dedication staying true to the role, or the never-ending grind? It's not fair to label someone as casual or lesser in a derogative way just because they do not raid on a schedule like you do, or they don't simply engage in the same activities as others. It is important to recognize that everyone has different motivations and goals when playing MMORPGs, and each playstyle is valid in its own right. But enough virtue signaling here, because I didn't really tackle the myth. While the categorization of MMORPG players based on in-game hours may provide a useful way to differentiate between players, it is important to consider whether the distinction is actually meaningful or useful. As in fact, I argue that it may be more effective to focus on the factors that influence player behavior and to recognize that developers have a greater responsibility to ensure that this game or any game is well designed and accessible. It is noteworthy that we see gamers, or even just people in general, tend to become more thoughtless with each innovation each year brings, or here more specifically, unbothered by the fundamental demanding nature of MMORPGs, where they perceive gameplay as a means of leisure and relaxation, but whenever they are forced or see one or two mechanics that takes a second or two to actually master, they go ahead and complain about it on subreddits. It's like, yes, you have the option for escapism, and therefore you relax, but if you want to even roleplay or imitate those other forms of relaxation with escapism inside the game, you will need to put in the hours regardless, as you conform to the inevitable steps that require to understand in-game mechanics. In other words, all this to say that MMO players are not casual players, as MMOs not necessarily made for casual gamers, and even those who seek simplicity still engage in complex activities within the game. I say complex, but that's in comparison to other gaming genres or finding escapism elsewhere. And don't forget guys, it is a virtual world we're talking about here. Lastly, I would like to importantly highlight that this is not completely your fault for thinking this way. The responsibility lies within the developers for their inadequate design choices or lack of effort in them, particularly with regards to the user interface and instructional methods for in-game mechanics. It is almost completely absent, for lack of a better word here. I don't think there has been one MMO that has been compellingly distinct in explaining a multifaceted mechanic to a novice that was seamlessly simple to understand. All of it is pretty much half-assed, if I'm being honest. I aim to say it is not the mechanics themselves that are flawed, but instead the way it is presented to the players. Because if you try to objectively look at the actual core mechanics of an MMO, they're quite simple, and even sometimes, I think, not complex enough. Alright guys, I get it, an unpopular opinion, but if you did make it to the end, I know this is a very sacrilegious video, but thank you. Oh, and except affixes. Affixes suck.